If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths, and sometimes heights, to ensure the power is always flowing. Which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Blog Talk Radio.
The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
All right, good evening, everybody, and once again, welcome to Golf Talk Live. I, of course, am your host, Ted Odorico, and very excited. We're going to be starting things off here as we normally do this time of year with a great discussion on Coach's Corner. I've got the guys waiting in the wings, if you will, and I'll bring them out here in just a moment. And then a little bit later on, I'm going to be welcoming back a guest. He's been on here a few times, actually, Joshua Jacobs, the CEO and founder of TGA Premier Sports. He's based out of California, so he'll be joining me here in the second half of the show. So I'm really, really excited to have him back and talk about some of the things that he's been doing here over the last several months. And just a quick note, I've got a special going on right now. If you visit my page on Facebook, that's Ted Odorico, or if you go to the Golf Tips Magazine Facebook page, there is the most recent post is a special offer. It's for Masters Week only. And it will end at the end of Masters Sunday, so Championship Sunday. And it is a special offer on the digital subscriptions only for the Golf Tips magazine. So if you like the digital version, you can go on there and you can get over 60% off the regular subscription price. So for $2.99, you can get a 1-year digital subscription and get all of the issues. Or you can do a 2-year for $4.99. So it's a great deal, over 60% off. Go to Golf Tips Mag on the Facebook social media page, or you can go to my personal page. It's on there as well. And just click on there. There's a link in there, and you can take right to the subscription page. You can gift it if you want, if you've already got a subscription. But for those of you that like the digital version, it's a great way to go, and there's a special on right now, over 60% off the digital subscription for both options, 1 year or 2 years. So take advantage of it. Go to Golf Tips Mag on the Facebook platform, and you'll see it there. All right, as I mentioned, we're going to starting off here with Coach's Corner. Let me introduce the guys. First up, of course, is John Hughes, PGA Master Professional. He was the honorary president of the North Florida PGA section. In 2013, he was the recipient of the PGA of America's Horton Smith Award. He's also a top 25 instructor with Golf Tips, as well as a senior editor and part of the Golf Tips advisory staff. Also joining us tonight is Pete Buchanan, founder and director of instruction and owner of Plain Simple Golf, LLC. Plain Simple Golf, of course, houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and the Simple Swing Repeater Training Brace. And he's been helping golfers focus on building a repeatable swing for over 30 years. So, guys, welcome to Coach's Corner here on Golf Talk Live.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks, Ted. Good to be here. Good to be with you, John.
All right. I appreciate both of you guys as always, and I know it's we were just talking off air that you guys are busy. So I appreciate. Thank you very much for giving of your time. I know it's not always easy to scoot back home from the golf course all day, and you're tired and probably just want to kick back and relax. But unfortunately, you're stuck with me for the next hour or so, but I appreciate it very much. All right, we're going to talk about a couple of things here. First off, we're going to tackle 5 quick tips for those of you. I mean, we all want to hit the ball farther, that are going to help you hit the ball farther. And then if we have time, we're going to talk about creating a plan that will stand the test of time. And I'll explain a little bit more about that if we have time. If not, I will save that for next week. So at some point, every golfer, guys, gets the itch. They want to hit the ball further, and why not? Adding a bit more distance certainly can help shorten your approach shots and improve your ability to hit greens in regulation. Plus, it feels great to really give it a rip, if you will. The problems begin to creep into the picture when you start giving up consistency for those extra yards. These issues predominantly arise from the belief that hitting the ball further means you need to be stronger or swing harder, which is a common misconception. So if you haven't already figured this out on your own, you'll soon find out that doing so increases your margin of error, thus resulting in a hook, slice, and all sorts of other messy shots. So with that said, here are 5 easy and more effective tips to help you hit the ball further. Give these a try next time you hit the range for your practice session. But I'm going to pick the brains of these 2 guys here and see if we can help. John, I'm going to come to you first, and we're going to talk about really watching your grip. We've all heard as part of one of the fundamentals about having a good grip, but sometimes your grip can actually not do you justice if you're not holding the club correctly. So we're going to talk about the actual adjustments that can be made to the grip to help gain you a little bit extra speed, and then also how grip pressure sort of plays a factor as well. So maybe you can tackle that one first if you want, or the other.
Sure. Thanks, Ted. Again, my honor be on with you, and Pete. Pete, always a pleasure being on with you. As far as grip goes, if you're really looking to gain more distance, it's all about where your left and right hands are placed on the grip so you have a flatter left wrist. So your bottom hand, I'm talking right-handed here, so the top hand is flatter. The bottom hand palm is facing the ground, trying to de-loft that golf club a little bit. But also what we're finding out over time and with some research is holding the grip too lightly is only going to make you do what? Grip it way too tight as you come down because you don't have security of the golf club. So right off the bat, the grip pressure is so vital to know that, okay, I've got security of it, but I'm not death gripping it, because as soon as you death grip it, there is absolutely no flexibility, no smoothness in how you're going to be able to create speed. At the end of the day, really simple drill for you to do. Make a fist with one arm and one hand and make it so tight and then try to move it fast. It's almost impossible to do. As soon as you allow that arm to be more relaxed, yet holding a grip very securely, all of a sudden you can move things faster. And if you think about grip pressure that way, that you want to hold it securely, don't worry about a bird or a tube of toothpaste, just hold it securely, but securely enough to where your wrists, the rest of your hand can operate correctly. Positionally, the more neutral, the better. When you go to a too strong of a grip, you're probably going to adjust the face somehow. As you said earlier, you lose consistency. What is that top wrist doing? How flat is it to de-loft the club without closing it? That bottom hand, where's the palm? Is it helping de-loft the club to gain more distance? It is about positioning that way. As much as I want to tell the listeners, here's one way of doing it. Again, here you need to look at yourself in the mirror to see this. Let your arms hang naturally from your shoulders, and you have a natural arm hang that probably puts your hands hanging at an angle to your body, and everybody's angular neutral arm hang is different. So therefore, your grip's going to be a little bit different based on who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your ability to securely hold the golf club. When you can accomplish those two things, a really good neutral grip, de-lofting the club, and it's secure, you're probably going to hit it further without even trying.
Yeah, great points. And just a couple things, that you said that was really important is allowing your arms to hang naturally to the side and your hands as well, how that differs from everybody. Because, if you stand in front of the mirror, obviously you want to do that so you can best see it because you don't want to be looking down because that sometimes can change how things are. So if you hang your arms naturally, you'll find that for some people, their hands will kind of turn in a little bit. Some will just be straight down, and you don't want to force. You want them just laying. You want them to be loose. You want them to hang naturally and not force position. Some people, believe it or not, actually their hands will turn slightly out from their body. And that's important because, again, what's neutral for one may not be for the other. So that's why you may see some people grip things a little bit stronger, some a little bit with a lighter or more neutral grip than somebody else because that's more natural feeling to them. So that is a certainly important aspect. And I just want to quickly touch on, and then Pete, I'm going to come to you with a different question on grip pressure because you mentioned a couple things. We've often heard, imagine you're holding a baby bird or you're squeezing a tube of toothpaste. Those are great analogies as long as you don't misinterpret them. And what I mean by that is the whole premise behind both of those examples is to not, as you put it, John, incur that death grip. So they're trying to instill a feeling of gripping a little bit light pressure. But the problem is with a lot of people is they've taken it literally and barely holding on to the club. So one of two things happen. As you said, from the backswing coming down, you end up re-gripping a lot of times too tight, and then it creates a lot of issues. Or if you're really too light, the club goes flying out the end when you finish your downswing. So just a couple of key points I wanted to mention out as well, but great answer, John. I appreciate that, and you're spot on as always. Pete, this is one I think that you'll love to bring in. That is to move the hips, getting your hips involved. You ever wonder how, we all see some of the smaller players on the PGA Tour or LPGA Tour still be able to drive the ball very far. Well, it's because a lot of it's in the hips. Keeping that in mind when you start your downswing, using the hips as a trigger to pull the club through your swing rather than trying to push it through with your arms allows you to use that sort of twisting momentum to generate a faster club head speed. So talk about the hips as well, because I think what this really gets to, Pete, is a lot about sequencing of the golf swing. Go ahead.
Well, it's a great question. Again, it's a pleasure to be on, and John, always enjoy spending some time with you on the Coach's Corner. I think it's a great question because I think more swings have been ruined by trying to move the hips than have been helped. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And it really depends a lot when you're looking at tour players, especially on where they're coming from in the backswing. You're going to find some really utilize the hips a lot more, those coming at the ball with the club face that's more closed, and you'll see that some don't utilize as much as they're coming with the face more neutral. So there's a combination in there, and your idea on sequencing is really right. But the hips need to also move to keep you in balance, because balance is going to be a great key to allow you to be able to drive the upper half. And so the legs and the hips together are going to be something that's going to help you to turn, to keep the upper body balanced, and to keep the overall motion so that you can move the lower half to start to get the upper half situated. And now you've got an opportunity to drive the hands and arms down and through to get the club in the right spot. And, too many times I think amateurs, when they're trying to really hit it hard, they'll throw themselves at it and forget to use the club. And so, they move so hard with the lower half that they get themselves totally out of position to try to swing the club in the right direction. We all know that, one of the things that's going to help you to hit it along the ways is the correct contact, getting the proper contact between the club and the ball. But I think when you're really looking at the lower half and the hips, they do turn. I don't think they drive as much as I think most people think. They're not sliding and driving the hips way forward. They actually might move a little bit, but they turn and rotate to allow the upper half to come into the right direction. But most importantly, in that sequence, to get the lower half to turn, to balance the upper half of the arm swing, to get the face more neutral when it comes into hitting it. So I think it's a great question. I think when you're looking at different players, you're going to see a difference between how they move with, how much the hips are out ahead and turned out from the upper body or more neutral together. But it really all depends on, where they're attacking it from with the backswing that they have. But it's definitely an important issue to get distance because you've got to have the legs, the hips, and that balance and that drive to center everything, to keep the balance so that the upper half has a chance to swing from a good direction, which will allow you to put the maximum, force of what you're trying to do onto the ball to help you gain the distance.
Great explanation. I love it. We see so many different players. Again, we're all different, and I think golf instruction has really evolved over the last several years to understand better that we are all different. And you're going to see from one player to another, you're going to see some that are going to be more of a turning motion, less lateral hip movement, some very little lateral hip movement, more turning, and others you'll see will make a much more pronounced. We've seen some players as well make a much more pronounced lateral movement. Again, it all boils to balance. And John, it goes into this really, one sort of feeds into the other. And what we're talking about here as well is shifting your weight. Transferring your weight is also very important. At the peak of your backswing, roughly, and again, this is just a rough estimate, 60% of your weight should be on your back leg. If you're right-handed golfer, that would be your right leg. Left-handed golfer, that would be your left leg, would be your back leg. And as you pivot through the ball with your hips and hands, about 85 to 90% of your weight should begin to shift to your front leg. So shifting the weight is also another thing to focus on if you want to gain those extra yards, but it kind of goes hand in hand with what Pete just talked about, and that is really utilizing your hips. So maybe you could touch a little bit more and help people understand about that weight shift from the back foot to the front, what should happen, what it should feel like essentially, and what more often than not golfers tend to do wrong, and what are some of the problems that it can cause. I know that's a mouthful, but I know you can handle it.
No, and I'll handle it in the two buzzwords that's out there now, ground force. A lot of people come to me asking, hey, I want to hit it further. What's this about ground force? Can you explain that to me? I know about weight shift, and like Pete said, there's different types of rotation, whether it's a little bit of lateral, more rotational, whatever it is. But that's all caused by how your feet interact with the ground, and you're able to take your weight from the back part of your swing at the top of your swing and move it towards the front. So I want to give everybody a visual picture. If they can envision Jason Duffner, when he was in his prime winning a PGA championship, his waggle, forget about his waggle with his wrists. If you can see his feet, and his feet went from heel to heel. And that was something he and Chuck Cook worked on quite a bit early in his career when he was at Auburn, was, hey, at the top of your swing, you need to be in your back heel. For the right-hander, the right heel, left-hander, the left heel. Why is this important? You need somewhere to post that weight to. You need a place where the weight to start. Now, if we're talking about setup, there's lots of different theories, lots of different opinions, but at the end of the day, at the top of your swing, you've got to have the ability to feel like, wow, I'm really strong, I'm really solid, I'm in a position where I can literally take my right heel and instep and push into the ground to literally start creating that weight shift forward. And as that weight shift goes forward, whether you've got a little bit of lateral turn, a complete rotational turn of your hips, that has a lot to do with your fitness level, your anatomy, but that is what's going to happen. It starts from the ground up. From there, think about Jason Duffner getting into his left heel at impact. It's not enough just to be balanced. It's not enough just to transfer 80 to 90% to your front foot. It's where in that front foot you want to be to actually leverage the ground more. Yeah, Justin Thomas leaps, and I've got quite a few junior golfers who are working on that leap to either get rid of it or minimize it, because that leap is in essence balanced forward onto the toes, and that's going to release the club earlier than you realize, simply because your equilibrium is trying to counterbalance you. You get into the heel of that front foot, now not only do you have a post to the back, you've got a post to the front. And the vision that I give people is, hey, shoulder, belt, and ankle, those are basically hinges to a doorway. And once you get those hinges mounted to the doorway, you're trying to turn into that doorway. And when you do that, the weight shift goes forward. It propels everything from bottom up, and then from up, meaning shoulders down to the golf club. Without a weight shift, you're losing, in some estimations, as much as 60% of the total energy you can create, no matter what your fitness level may be. It's a really astonishing number, but when you think about it, if you keep your weight on the back foot, how can you hit it far? Just think about that, and think about heel to heel. To those people out there, it's something I work with almost daily with my amateur clients on.
It's very interesting that you really isolated the footwork, because, you know, Nicholas talked about that a lot through his career. He said really the golf swing, you know, in addition to happening between your ears, of course, he was referring to the mental game, he said really happens between your feet. It's the movement between your feet that is going to really dictate balance. And he talked about if you've got good footwork, you're going to get that proper weight transfer. If you don't, then you're going to end up falling back on your trail foot, which, again, for right-handed golfers is going to be your right foot. And a lot of times we create that what they call reverse pivot. And a lot of times in that case, too, you do a lot of casting, or you throw your right shoulder tends to go out before going down, and you get a lot of that cutting across the ball. So there's a lot of different things when it comes to, you know, using our hips and understanding shifting of weight. And I think what you said really should resonate. People need to pay attention to that. And I find, too, there are a lot of great drills that you can do. Obviously, we can't get into them on air because it's a little hard to visualize on air here. But I like to have students close their eyes and just very gently swing. Do full swings, but not at full capacity, just at maybe 50%, just to feel the weight of the club and just feel that transfer from foot to foot, and seeing if their balance is being maintained. And if they do things correctly, they should be able to stay in balance even with their eyes closed. If they're not, they're going to be a little wobbly, or they're going to end up falling back, or maybe even going a little bit too far if they try to force it by moving those hips out in front too much. So great answer, John. I like that. And Pete as well on using and utilizing the hips properly. Pete, I'm going to come back to you on this one here. And this is one we hear a lot about, and that is keeping that lead arm straight. Again, we're going to talk about right-handed golfers. So for you left-handers, just sort of flip things in reverse. But this is something too, but there's a lot of misunderstandings about this as well. You know, we've been taught about keeping that, you know, that straighter you keep that your lead arm or left arm for right-handed golfers, the longer the ball will travel. Well, there's a certain element of truth to that. It is certainly essential for adding distance. And you're going to create a longer distance for the club head to travel by keeping that lead arm straight in order to get the ball back at impact. So a longer swing certainly does usually result in more distance on your shot, but there is a danger as well, and one of those is locking the arm. Maybe you can touch on some of the pros and cons and what it really means about keeping that lead arm straight. Pete, that's for you.
Yeah, that's another great question. You know, the lead arm is to create width, and that's really what its purpose is. The lead arm is going to create width. The trail arm is going to help you to be able to, you know, position the club in a pretty good spot, and also to be able to help drive the club back through the ball. But the lead arm and its width is important, that, you know, when you're returning back to the ball, you've got sufficient width to get back to a good contact point. If it's rigid and stiff, it's going to minimize the amount of movement that you can make, and it will probably affect a lot what happens with your trail arm. Being said, I mean, one of the straightest drivers to ever play the PGA Tour was Calvin Peete, who injured his left arm as a youngster and couldn't straighten it. But he used that to provide sufficient width based on what he was doing. And so, he utilized that arm to the width that was necessary. So the lead arm is really important because, as you move away, you've got to have sufficient to get a wide enough arc so that you can, create a little bit more speed. A wider arc is going to help you get more overall clubhead speed, but you don't want to get it to where it puts you out of position by being, too stiff or too much in the wrong direction or too straight or too steep. One of the things we see a lot with, especially with drivers, with players, that, they just swing the club so vertical with one club that's built to swing horizontal. And so it doesn't match up very well. And so you have to be careful that you don't get the club out of position by trying to keep the lead arm, straight or locked or it's just there to create sufficient width. And I know for myself, as I've gotten older in playing this game, I don't have as much, overall length of motion that I used to have. And my left arm has a little bit of a bend at the top, but I provide sufficient width at it coming back to the bottom to get back to the golf ball. So I think it has to have enough straightness or length to create a sufficient width to get you, coming at it from an angle that's going to give you sufficient speed and contact. But I don't think it has to be rigid and locked. And, going on that a little bit, I used to tell all the time when I was doing a bunch of clinics, if you keep your lead arm straight and your trail arm tucked into your side, there's about a foot gap and you're not going to be able to grab onto the golf club. There's got to be some give and take between the two arms. But, you don't want to have anything that's too rigid or too locked, but you want to create enough of a width and sufficient width of that lead arm so you have a pretty good arc that you can drive the ball with maximum distance.
Yeah, and that's a great definition, Pete, and explanation of that lead arm because, like you, obviously we all, as we get a little bit older, we don't have the same flexibility in that. What often we see with a lot of senior golfers will often see because they don't have the flexibility, they'll try to force that arm straight and they'll literally lock it. And the problem is that's fine for the first little bit, but as you start to get further in the backswing, if you lock that arm, you won't be able to take it back very far. There is a certain amount of natural bend that happens even in your lead arm. Now, obviously for some younger players, they're able to maintain that a little bit longer and get a full 90-degree turn. But some of our senior golfers, they're not turning 90 degrees, certainly not naturally. They might only, get 75, 80 at the most if they're in pretty good shape. And by keeping that left arm locked and not really just focusing on getting proper width, creates a whole myriad of problems. So I really appreciate the way you sort of explain that out. It looks and appears straight, but if you actually look at it, it's really not, as they said, ramrod straight, or it's not locked. There is a very slight bend in that lead arm, but it is important to keep it as straight as you can without locking it in order to get that width. So great answer. Thank you, Pete. I appreciate that. John, on this last one here that we have for our 5 quick tips for helping to gain more distance, and this one here is another one. Again, I think that there's a lot of misunderstandings and there's a lot of forcing of this particular movement, and that is to turn your hands over. Making sure you finish your swing strong by turning your right hand over at the correct moment is certainly important. The key is to snap, some refer to as a whoosh, if you will, of your right hand for righties through the ball at impact in order to ramp up that extra club speed, which will in turn increase the flight distance of the ball. So talk about what it really means to sort of turn the hands over. Some don't like to use that term. You may have something else that you do, but essentially what is happening as we're coming through impact with our hands, what's actually transitioning.
So the way you described it initially is the classic quote-unquote flip. What I mean by that is so many people want to turn that bottom hand over and they immediately cup the top wrist. You start flipping the club. You can close it, you can open it, you can do a lot of different things based on what time in the swing that you start turning that wrist. So when you're talking about driver and we're talking about speed and distance, so let's just isolate it here with the driver. if you can imagine hitting the inside of the golf ball and where that face has got to be for that to happen, there's no way you're going to turn your wrists over any earlier than the moment of impact. If you do, you're probably going to hit the outside of the golf ball, if you can imagine that in your hands right now. With that said, can you now take the club, and the term is block, and literally block the ball to the right? And when you do that, you're using the ground force to make the weight shift. You're making the rotation. You're trying to keep that lead arm as extended as possible. When you go to do that, that front wrist, if you're looking at it from a pure speed standpoint of view, flattens. If it doesn't flatten, it's actually bending the opposite way, sort of like a Dustin Johnson. And then your right, your bot for the right-hander, the right hand, the palm, and I said this earlier when we were talking about grip, it's not rotating up like you're going to hold a tray of drinks. It's actually rotating down. The palm of that hand is going down facing the ground, and that's going to basically keep loft from being too superficial, too much, and keep the club square. It's from that point of impact and beyond that what the common average golfer, the not-so-educated golfer, sees is the rotation of the hands past the ball. You'll see a full release and extension of both hands, sort of a Y. And you could literally draw a Y from the shoulders down to the hands down to the golf club. And that golf club's going to be anywhere between a foot to 3 feet in front of the golf ball based on the golfer and the way they rotate and the way they make a weight shift. But if you put them at impact, that bottom palm is facing down, the true long-distance drivers. That palm is facing down. That lead wrist is flat. And if you go to rotate too early, that's normally where Pete and I and you see not only the super inconsistent distances, but we see the double miss. And the double miss is where all this gets miscombobulated with. If you can miss to one side, preferably the right side, if you can, you're going to have that bottom palm down, top wrist flat, and this is going to enable you to release, not rotate, but release the club through the golf ball. And that's really the key. It's not about rotating hands. It's about releasing the club head and the face of the club through the golf ball. And if you can think of hitting the inside of the golf ball, you're well on your way to establishing that long-term for yourself.
Great explanation. Again, I picked really these areas to talk about tonight because, as both of you have pointed out with each of the 5 points, is not only what we need to be thinking about as golfers, but what we need not to be focusing on as well. You very eloquently pointed out in each case, some of the misconceptions or the misunderstandings that are often relayed out there. And, I think sometimes, it's been well intended over the years through instruction, but as I mentioned earlier about, with the grip, about some people sort of visualizing or hearing that, holding a baby bird or even a tube of toothpaste, a lot of times people misunderstand really what's being taught to them. And some cases it's not really meant to be literal. It's just meant to be sort of metaphoric and saying, okay, this is what you need to, this is sort of a sense that you want to have, but you don't literally have to take it that way 100% of the time. And the reason why I think that it's important to get these things out for a lot of golfers is there's still a lot of folks out there that are struggling. They've been playing for a long time, especially some of our more seasoned golfers that have been out for a little bit. We certainly want them to be healthy and be fit, but you don't, if you want to hit the ball further, pardon me, excuse me, you don't need to necessarily be hitting the gym 5 days a week or be swinging out of your shoes in order to hit the ball further. It really a lot of times can be something simple in your swing mechanics and not necessarily your muscles that can make the golf ball travel farther, like we talked about tonight. So get out there and give these tips that we've talked about here tonight in some of these areas. Play them over again after the show is over. Go back. You can go to the network, blogtalkradio.com, and you'll see the recorded version will be there. Of course, we're live right now, but you'll see the recorded version at the end of the show. Go back and listen to those points again. And when you get out there and you're working with your professional, talk to them about some of these things and make sure that you fully understand everything that we're talking about here. And if you do so, you're going to find that you're going to start seeing extra yards. Forget about going out and spending, more money on more equipment to try and get the job done. Sometimes just fixing the things within yourself is going to accomplish what it is that you want. And getting together with a good golf instructor like the guys on the show tonight and getting them to help you through some of these different areas and challenges of your game, you're going to start to see those extra yards, and you're going to feel better about your golf game overall and certainly have more enjoyment to the game. All right, guys, we still have some time left, and as I said, in addition to the 5 quick tips to hit the ball further, we were going to talk about creating a plan that will stand the test of time. I'm going to set this up, and what we're going to do is not so much a back and forth, but this is going to be sort of an open discussion. I'm going to start with Pete on this just to start with, and then John, I want you to jump in at some point as well. And I'll, of course, as always, throw in my 2 cents. So here's what I mean by creating a plan that stands the test of time. One of the things that a lot of golfers do, Pete, is, they come out each season, they go through the process, they work on some of the fundamentals, and they get out there and they play some pretty decent golf, maybe have a few bad rounds, but they overall play pretty decent. Then they sort of shelf the clubs for a little while. They get back out, and the next year they got to keep repeat. It's like a wash, repeat, and rinse. And they don't really seem to be able to get out there and pick up where they've left off. So as an instructor or as instructors for both of you, what do you like to do when you're working with a student, whether it's a new student or somebody that you've been working with a while? What is it that you like to do? Let's build out a repeatable system, if you will. Let's forget about the swing, a system that they can take from season to season and certainly build upon each season, improve upon each season, but that's going to stand the test of time, and it's not going to be like reinventing the wheel every time they come out each season. So how can we start them off right, and what are some of the things that we need to do to make sure that we're giving them the groundwork and the tools that are going to help them be able to accomplish that? Pete, I'm going to start with you, and then John, I want you to jump in.
This is a really good one. The first thing I like to get all of my players to do is what are you after in the first place? What are you trying to do? What is your overall, goal for this season? And I'd like to take them, and I'm going to jump them forward at the end of the season. So where would you like to see yourself when this season is up? Where would you like to be? And once I get that answer, I say, okay, now let's put together a plan to go get there. Or sometimes it may not be as realistic as, they might be a little bit lenient. They're not going pushing themselves as far as they can. And sometimes they may, push themselves over the cliff. But, we know how that goes too. But, we want to be able to get them a realistic ending to their season, and then let's put together an overall plan to get you there. And not necessarily from, all the swing things that you're talking about. How much time you're going to spend on your short game, putting, chipping, pitching, the drills that you're going to use to continue to keep the consistency in the shots that you're going to play, the amount of time that you're going to put into each one of those segments. So, creating a nice plan that they can go out so when they practice, they have specific things to do. So it's not just going out and, hitting a bucket of balls. And, as I've always said, it doesn't take, anything but a bucket of balls to lull you to sleep because there's so many sitting in there. You need to have a purpose to what you're doing. So I like to give them, an overall plan as to, here's where you want to end up. These are the things we're going to have to do to get you there. And then these segments are going to get you to be able in practice to take you so that at the end of the season you're in that spot. I think it's more, there's always going to be mechanical work and swing work. That goes without saying. But I think there's also has to be a dedicated time to just practicing situations, techniques, and, just being out there and getting comfortable in some of those short shots. Most of the players that we see, 70% of their game is inside of 40 yards. And, they want to sit up there and bomb drivers all day long. And if we can get them to understand the importance of inside of 40 yards and what it means to their score, I think overall encompassing that into a plan is going to make it, so much more beneficial for them overall to get to where they want to go.
Pete,
right.
I do something
and John,
similar.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Ted.
All I was just going to add real quick. Let me just add real quick before you go in. What I want to do too with this is I want for us to really emphasize, and Pete, that was a great analogy as well. I really want for us to emphasize the point that what we want our students to do is to be able to go from season to season. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be at the golf course. There may be things that they can be working on even when they're at home that can help them keep everything in context and in place, so that when if for those that are maybe up in the Northeast that have a little bit of a lull during the winter months and can't get out to a facility to work at, there's things that they can be doing to make sure that when they come out, it's not like, again, reinventing the wheel. John, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. Pete, I do very similar, and to Ted's point as far as what's a plan for a lifetime, not just this season or next season, I'm always inquiring, well, what are your other life priorities? And let's take an inventory of that. So when Ted was talking earlier about putting the clubs up and they're collecting some dust, why are they collecting dust? Is it just because of weather? Or are you going hunting? Or is it time to do something else within your life priorities? If I know that, and if you know that as my client, now all of a sudden to pick right back up where you left off in September or October, what's it going to take while you're hunting or while you're doing the other things that you do in the fall? I get a lot of people up. I got to give it up. It's football season. Well, great. As you're watching a football game, what are you doing to help your golf swing? While you're up in that tree stand, what are you doing to help yourself with that golf swing? And people look at me like I'm nuts. But it is a more holistic plan from the standpoint of view of, hey, do you have something to squeeze with your fingertips while you're up in that tree stand? It's going to take some time away and some tension away so you can squeeze a trigger very, very softly and slowly so you make your mark. But it's also developing finger strength that you don't lose that finger strength you gained over the summer playing a lot of golf, which helps you secure the golf club. So there's an inventory part that I'll take right off the bat to not only say, okay, what's your goal by X time, but I'll also fast forward that 2, 3, 4 years, not to find out commitment. You just used a very good term, dedicated. And I coined a term late in 2019 that I've been really trying to drive home to people. Are you dedicated to the discipline of your details? And that's a very easy phrase to use all year long, even if you're snowed in, even if you're shut in pandemically, even if you're up in a tree stand, if you're constantly watching football with everybody, you can still be dedicated to your golf game and dedicated to your plan. The real key is, are you disciplined to your plan? Are you willing to take the small moments to do these things, whether it's indoors? And what a lot of people who come to me for coaching realize after the first couple of coaching sessions, they look at me and go, wow, what you're giving me, I can actually do all year round. And I'm like, yes, that's correct. That's by design, because I don't want them to put the clubs away and not have something to do. And I think that's super important for people like Pete. You're in St. Louis. There's a time there you got to shut down. And what are these people doing when because of weather you're shutting down? So that's sort of where I'm coming from with a plan for life. It's the inventory, and it's understanding what you can do when you're not playing golf to actually maintain skills. And that's really what you're talking about, is the maintenance, so you pick up where you left off.
Yep, that's a great points as well. And Pete, coming back to you real quick, I think the other component as well, which sort of works together with all of this, is we always have to be reviewing the process. We always have to be taking stock, taking inventory of what's going on. quite often we always hear, well, beginning of the season we come out and, let's do a review and let's talk about it, and that's great, and then we don't do anything until maybe the end of the season if we're lucky. Some players will do that again. But I like to encourage people to sort of take stock all the way as they go along. I want them to understand, okay, what is it that they're doing right? What are the areas that they're really gaining some momentum in? Is it their short game is really starting to improve? And let's analyze that, obviously with your professional to help point out that, if you're working with somebody. If not, I suggest you do, because that's a good way of getting it done in an accurate way and making sure that you're sticking to a game plan, because they're going to help you do that. But I like to get people reviewing things a lot, because I think if the more you keep it in your mind, the more you review and look at different aspects of your game, the more it's going to be fresh. If you're even in the off season, even as John talked, whether you're in a tree stand, you can go through things in your mind if necessary, or whether you're watching a football game. Obviously, you want to have enjoyment, and I'm not saying that you have to be, if it's a Super Bowl, you got to spend the whole Super Bowl working on your golf game. But during the breaks, you can kind of be thinking about some things or what have you. Talk about that a little bit, Pete, if you wouldn't mind, about the review process and how we need to sort of incorporate that with students, and how the students need to grapple onto that as well throughout the season, not just at the beginning and not just at the end, in order to carry that momentum from year to year.
Yeah, that's definitely something that, I like to have my players do, especially from evaluating each practice session. How did it go? What was good? What was not good? What parts did you struggle on? And so we can have that information for the next one. After you've played around, what so many people don't realize is when tournament players do most of their practicing after they play. And even if you don't have time to go to the range after you play, you should jot down a few notes of what happened while it's fresh in your mind, just like you said. After you get done playing, analyze what happened out there. Strengths, what were your weaknesses? What parts can be better that we can then put into the current process and plan that we have that are going to enable us to get over those hurdles that you're struggling with on the golf course. And so, yeah, definitely. I like to do it, each time I see them, I always make sure that they can practice at least a couple of times before they come back to see me. And when I see them, I'm going to say, okay, where are we? Based on what we did last time, how far have you advanced? What are the things, that you're doing well? What are you not doing well? Let's look at where you are, and let's provide this now moving forward to continue to move down the road step by step as we go. And I think that's important that they take the time to evaluate, as you said, the good and the bad, because the bad things can really assist you as well in enabling you to know where you struggle. And, so many times, too, when they go back and evaluate their golf games, in their mind they're thinking, God, if I just drove it better. And then they go back and look at their game and say, boy, I spent so many shots around the greens, it was ridiculous. So it really wasn't, the one area they thought it was. And so those evaluations are important when you're done. And so, take a minute. I encourage all my players to have a little spiral notebook in their bag and just open it up and write down when you're finished, what was good, what was not good. What things are you really encouraged about? What things do you still need work on? And so that we can continue to update the process, as you said, each time, not only that we get together, but each time that you play, so that the next time you're out there, you can work on those items in between to make the next round even better.
Yeah, and there's a key word that you threw in there. It is a process. People don't realize this. Even the best players in the world, it's an ongoing process. They don't just all of a sudden get to, tour level and stay that way. It's a continual, almost like a workshop, if you will. They're always, improving. They're always working on things. And John, a couple of points that you raised earlier that maybe you can just focus on a little bit more here as we get ready to wrap up. And that is really two areas. And that is setting realistic goals and allowing yourself to focus on things that are attainable for somebody at your level, and then working with your professional once you ascertain what those goals are and you've developed a plan, is whatever practice, whatever functions that you do moving forward, that you do it with a sense of purpose and not just, as we've talked about many times, where you grab a bucket or so of range balls and you're just hitting ball after ball. Touch on that, because that's an area too, I think, the practicing, how we really need to make sure it's with purpose, and also setting attainable and reachable goals and realistic for really where we're at this particular moment. Go ahead.
So the question here is, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And this, to me, and I'm sure Pete and you, it's very obvious. It's what's obtainable and what's not, because you can't have purposeful practice if you're trying to obtain something that's not realistic. So I always tell my clients, feel lucky that I'm honest with you, feel lucky that I'm transparent, feel lucky that I will tell you point blank, in my professional opinion, this is a obtainable goal versus right now this may not be an obtainable goal for whatever reason it is. Let's look at those obtainable goals and let's segment them. Let's peel multiple layers of the onion back. Let's not just shoot for the moon here. How do you get to the moon? It's varying stages, and you've got to get to that obtainable goal with even smaller goals along the way. So if it's, hey, let's get my ball speed to 120. I can't get my ball speed past 110. Well, the goal might be 120. The obtainable goal is, let's get to 111. And people bypass that. It just totally goes over their head. So when we're talking about, okay, my goal is 120, is it obtainable? Well, there's a fitness component, there's an equipment component, there's a practice component. There's a lot of components to that. Let's look at all the variables, make sure the variables all add up, and if 120 is obtainable, now let's shoot for 111. And what is it going to take to get to 111? Now you're working into purposeful practice. Now you're working into, hey, I've got a purpose to try to hit this ball a certain way, because if I do, I hit the center a little bit better, I'm more efficient, my smash factor, all these other things, they add up to, oh, wow, I just hit it 111. Great, you obtained a goal. How does that make you feel? Well, it makes them feel wonderful. Not only does it make them feel wonderful, it makes them feel motivated to do what? Let's reach the next attainable goal. What's that goal? 112. It's not 120, it's 112. And when you look at it that way, if you peaked at 120 and then couldn't hit 114 to save your life consistently, what good is that 120? What good is that?
Right.
So the obtainable goal, it's got to be realistic, and we look at it from many different perspectives and variables. But then once we have all those boxes checked, now let's make smaller goals in between and set up things in your practice to obtain those goals, not once, but sustainably, longer period of time. It's those longer sustainable goals that actually get you to the ultimate one. And I think Pete basically said it. I'll re-say it a different way. You reach 120, great. What's next? What's next? Let's just not rest on our laurels right there. What's next? Is it 125? Or is it something else? I want to go 120 with my ball speed, but I want to get my smash factor better. What does that entail? It could mean that you're not swinging the club as fast. Maybe you're swinging it more efficiently. There's different ways of looking at it, but there's always got to be that next goal. And as you watch the Masters this week, to a person, they have a goal beyond just what they're doing this weekend. They have a goal beyond just what they're doing the next 2 months of their career or the next year of their career, or even the next 2 years. They've always got something obtainable, realistic, all the variables and boxes are checked, and they're always motivated because they're reaching smaller goals to get to the bigger one.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Pete, is what often happens is, most professionals, and there's obviously a few rare occasion examples, but, once pros find something that is working for them, they're done in that area. Now, they might tweak things here and there, but they're not making big changes. Quite often what we will see with a lot of amateur golfers is they'll go out one week and they'll play great. They're striking the ball solid, and the next week they get out there, they're not hitting it so solid. And instead of isolating what the problem is, they start rearranging everything. Now suddenly everything's not working right. Whereas it may not necessarily have been their grip, or it may not have been their posture. It could have been one other area that they didn't see, but now they start changing their swing. Well, pros don't do that. They know that there's going to be inconsistency throughout their round. So what can a player, what can an amateur do to avoid falling into that trap?
Well, I think more than anything else, if they're working along the lines of what we just talked about, that will keep them from falling into those traps. When you don't play as well as you would like to, there's no reason to go in and, throw all the tools away and buy new tools and start over. That's not what happened.
Right.
You have to evaluate each of the areas and figure out, what's going on. It could be, from one round to the next, it could be chipping and putting that just added 15 shots to your round. And so if you're tracking those things and you're looking at them and, paying attention, and as we said before, going through the process of looking at each of the areas, I think that'll keep you from falling into the trap of trying to retool the whole 9 yards. You really don't have to do that. You're always going to be working towards a common goal. And to me, I always give them, especially on the full swing, here's the impact that we're working towards. I'm not going to give you 15 things to continue to work on. We're going to continue to work at getting that impact. We're always working towards that goal. I always want them to work towards correct. Don't fight at incorrect. That'll destroy your game faster than anything else. Understand what correct is that you're trying to achieve and always work towards correct. They'll get there so much faster if they go down that road. But if they also understand throughout that process what parts of the game are giving them the pluses and minuses, I think, as I just said, they won't go back and retool it all. They'll continue moving forward and advancing along each one of those lines and making the whole process better.
Right. Well said. And John, finally, just one last point as we get ready to end this discussion. What can a golfer do in between sessions with their professional? I'm talking about at the range, but a lot of times by the time they come out the next time, maybe it's 2 weeks in between a session that they might have with you. Some might be less, but, a lot of times it might be a couple of weeks. And a lot of times by the time they come out, they've forgotten what they want to ask you. They're not really – what's a good way for your students, or what do you try to encourage them to do to prepare for the next lesson? So they've come to you, they've taken a lesson today, you've worked through the things, you've maybe reviewed it as Pete had talked about, but what are some things that you want them to do for the next time out?
I definitely want them to journal what they're doing, but I also encourage them to text, email, call me. Just in the last 6 days, I've had 10 different clients from around the world text me about what they're doing with their practice. I was actually on the phone with a young man from Pete's neck of the woods in Springfield, Missouri last night. He was really worried about wind conditions and wanted to know how to hit a knockdown shot. So he's literally got his earbuds in. I'm talking to him. I'm coaching him through it. That was, is that a norm? Not necessarily, but I think when you find a great coach, that's one of the hallmarks of a great coach. They're accessible, and you can bounce ideas off them. When Pete was saying, hey, write things down, learn from what you're doing, what he's also saying is, hey, share those with me. And if you don't want to wait for 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is, and I probably won't see this client for at least another month, it's okay to text me, hey, how do I do this? Or I found out how to do this. I self-discovered this. What do you think of this? Having that open discussion with a really good coach is invaluable. So long as you're engaging with yourself first and self-discovering and not highly reliant on the coach to get it done for you, why not keep that communication open? Why not be able to write those notes down and text it to Pete or you or I, or send the email, hey, I had a great practice session last night, and I found out my no man's land is 67 yards to 42 yards. Now we need to work on that. Great. Now I've got a note. The next time you show up, I've got to set up my distance control flags from 70 to 30, and we got to go work on that. So it's a give and take. It's not always our way. It's always your way, but it's a dialogue. And in between those sessions, lifelong with a coach that you find that works for you. And I know Pete has a couple of clients like this. I know one personally. It's okay to contact us. It's no big deal because we're invested in you almost as much as you're invested in yourself.
Right. Well said. All right, guys. Great discussion tonight on Coach's Corner. You guys did a fantastic job as always. I really I hope that everybody had an opportunity to really listen well and listen hard because there was a lot of good information tonight. And if you didn't and you came in partway through the conversation, at the end of the show, go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live. Scroll down to the on-demand section. You will see the recorded version of tonight's show there, and you can listen to the parts that you miss or listen to the in entirety. So I suggest you do that. Very quickly, guys, Pete and then John, the folks want to reach out. What's the best way they can communicate with you?
Again, thanks, Ted and John. Enjoyed it. They can find me at one of two places, stlouisgolflessons.com, plainandsimplegolf.com. Either one will get you directly to me.
Perfect. And John?
Thanks, Pete. Always a pleasure. Ted, always an honor. I very much appreciate the opportunity. It's real simple as Pete, John Hughes Golf. It's real simple, whether it's .com, hashtag, an @ an ampersand, whatever it is, just look up John Hughes Golf. That's the way to find me. And I encourage you that if you're somewhere in the world listening to this podcast through instantgolfimprovement.com, which is my virtual platform, you can get the same kind of coaching that you heard this evening. Thanks again, Ted.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. As always, thank you and have a great evening. And I'll see you next time on Coach's Corner. All right, that was John Hughes and Pete Buchanan, part of the Coach's Corner panel discussion tonight. As always, I appreciate their thoughts and input, and I look forward to the next time they come on. All right, very quickly before I bring on tonight's special guest, here's a quick message from Golf Tips Magazine.
The following ad is sponsored by Golf Tips Magazine.
Are you tired of being short off the tee? And what about those 3 putts? Forget about it. It's time you got serious about your game. Golf Tips, the most in-depth magazine in the industry. For over 30 years, Golf Tips has delivered expert content such as the latest golf instruction from America's top pros, simple-to-follow practice and game improvement drills, fitness and mental game tips, equipment, training aids, accessory and apparel reviews, golf destinations and travel tips for every budget, and so much more. Don't miss a single issue. Go to golftipsmag.com and subscribe today.
All right. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you go to the Golf Tips Magazine's Facebook page, you will see the most recent post there. There is a special for Masters Week. Save over 60% off of a digital subscription, digital only, not the hard or printed version, but digital only for those that you like to view things on your tablet or phone. You can get over 60% off right now for a 1-year subscription. You'll get all 6 issues for $2.99 or for a 2-year subscription, $4.99. It's a great deal for Masters Week only. Offer expires on Championship Sunday, this coming Sunday, so you want to take advantage of it. There's just a few more days left. You can go to the Golf Tips Magazine Facebook page, and you'll see the advertisement there in the last post, and you just open it up, and you'll see that there's a link there to click on, and you can order for yourself, or you can do it as a gift if you want as well. Gift it to somebody. Maybe you already got a subscription, or you can do a couple. Do one for yourself and do one for that other special golfer in your family. All right, I'm very excited to welcome back this evening's guest. He's been on the show a number of times. Of course, I'm talking about Joshua Jacobs, founder of TGA Premier Golf, and he is was named by Golf Magazine as one of the top 40 most influential people in golf under 40 and was recognized as one of golf's innovators by Golf Inc. He served on PGA of America's national boards, the Southern California PGA's Foundation Advisory Board, and the Player Development Board, also the World Golf Foundation Advisory Board, and the USTA's National Schools Committee. In addition to golf, Jacobs also created the same franchise model for tennis in partnership with the United States Tennis Association, and most recently launched an additional 6 sports to TGA's product listing. So without further hesitation, let me bring on this evening's special guest, Joshua Jacobs, founder of TGA Premier Sports. Joshua, good evening and welcome.
How are you? It's been a while.
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, you were on towards the end of last season and lots of things going on. I know we talked about all the stuff going on with COVID and whatnot, but it's a new year and we're moving forward and things are there. Believe it or not, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And we're all excited, especially for golf. Golf has done really well this last season overall, and a few glitches here and there, but I think we're starting to get back into some good territory here. So let's, for those that have never heard of TGA, just very briefly give them an explanation of what it's about, explain a little bit about the franchise opportunity, and at the end, we'll give them an opportunity at the end of the show to go and check out on the website for themselves to get a little bit more detail. But just give an overview of TGA.
Well, TGA was formed, it was almost 20 years ago, and we franchised the concept about 15 years ago. And the idea behind it is just to provide access to kids who who otherwise would never have had making it available to everyone. And we do that through after-school programs that are done right on school campuses, at community centers, churches, temples. It really doesn't matter. We created a curriculum that can be done indoors or outdoors, small space, large space. And then we create that, initial kind of bottom of the pyramid of the player pathway. So it's very introductory programs, building a passion for golf by these students and their families. And then you get them to a golf course. We partner with a number of golf courses to run camps and clinics and parent-child and family events. And it became a business model. And it started in LA, for those listeners who remember, and then it branched out nationwide. We're in a little over 30 states now, and we'll hit our millionth kid here at the end of the year where they'll register. And it's really exciting. I'm in complete agreement with you that golf is coming back. We're seeing that. Of our franchises that are running programs, they're either almost all sold out of camps or they're completely sold out of their camps already for the summer. And the demand has never been higher for the sport. So it's pretty exciting. I think that a number of adults have started playing, and that's trickled down to the kids. And, we've made it COVID safe. Our programs were already kind of COVID safe to start. We had station-based learning as it was, but now we really have a great story to tell, and the demand is out there, and we're starting to see some real excited kids and families who want to get into it.
Yeah, and let me just to put things in a little bit of perspective for those again that are maybe not familiar. As you were alluding to, back in 2003, you launched. Basically, you were in 12 Los Angeles elementary schools, creating the first after-school golf enrichment curriculum of its kind. And in 2006, just a few short years later, the demand grew for the program, and that's when you really sort of scaled it for a franchise-based company, and you've expanded. And today, TJ delivers these introductory after-school programs, camps, and parent-child events and leagues at over 3,400 locations nationwide. So a lot of growth has happened in those 20 years. Would you agree?
Yeah, the business has certainly scaled very steadily for a number of reasons, but it's exciting to see, and it's crazy to think about what we're now just starting to hear stories of these kids that started out especially when we went nationwide, starting to hear stories that they're becoming coaches of our programs. So these kids who took our programs, were introduced to golf in the schools or at a golf course, are now becoming coaches of our programs. In fact, there was a great, in addition to that, there was a great stat that I was presented with about the girls' high school championships in Michigan. And we have a very big program in Detroit. Our franchise owner, Dave Robinson, does an amazing job out there. But almost 40% of the participants in the girls' high school state championships had some affiliation with TGA. So
wow.
It's nice to see everything come full circle, not only from the competitive aspect of it, but also from the community service aspect of it, and it's really special.
Well, it's nice to it's nice, like you said, to see numbers like that, and obviously they're going to continue to grow because you guys do have a great business model. I mean, you've been doing it for 20 years, as you said, and you're really getting to the heart of golf. We've talked about, you and I, over the many shows that we've done together, about really growing the game. And it really starts at this level. It's not, the 50 and 60-year-olds. I mean, obviously there's some new coming into the game, as they did last year, that maybe have never played before. But the truth of the matter is it's the junior market, and it's getting these youngsters introduced to the game. Unlike many other sports out there that is typically in the curriculum of schools, golf is one that's, a little bit more isolated than some. So unless they're introduced to it at a very early age, they're not as likely to grapple onto it unless they have somebody within their family. So you're really feeling a niche, if you will, in the market that was long overdue. There certainly has been junior programs around, for playing and so forth. But again, they were typically with families who already had some sort of exposure to golf and that. But for many others, as you said earlier, that didn't have maybe some of the same advantages, you're now introducing it for them in a whole new way. That's allowing them to sort of take part and be introduced to a great game. And I know you have some other things besides golf. We can talk about that as well. I want to talk about something that you guys just recently launched, again, continuing that sort of education theme a little bit, and that is the College Golf Experience, or CGE, as we'll call it for short. That seems to be the next level in your player pathway model. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's something we're really excited about, and we were afforded a great opportunity to kind of dive into, similarly what you were just discussing. TGA certainly focuses on that bottom of the pyramid, the introductory level programs, and kind of goes into that next level of recreational camps. But CGE is a little bit different, where it's for a little bit more accomplished players who are aspiring to play collegiate golf. And our whole base, creating unique and transformational opportunities for these junior golfers, certainly at all stages of development, but more with an emphasis on the aspiring college student athletes. And it's all about providing juniors unprecedented access to college coaches. And there's really not a lot of ways to do that, because at tournaments that these kids are playing in, coaches aren't allowed to engage with them and their family. They can really only observe. So to give these kids an opportunity, these accomplished juniors an opportunity to engage with the coaches in a camp setting, understand the culture of the team, be able to tour the college or the university, that is, to me, extremely important in a junior golfer's decision of where they play. And so providing that opportunity, I think, is going to be key to the player pathway.
Well, and here's something, as you were saying that, I was thinking about this, because quite often, I mean, I've talked to a lot of different people who, both parents and kids, who want to have that college golf experience, but the truth of the matter is they really don't know where to go. They don't know where to turn. They have a lot of unanswered questions. They don't even know where to start. And it sounds like to me, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, that really what you're doing here is twofold. One, you're helping to educate the players and helping them develop towards that goal of getting into potentially a college program, but you're also making it a little bit easier by the sounds of it for a lot of coaches and for the recruiting process, because now the kids are going to be a little better educated in understanding what the process that's involved. Is that correct? And maybe you can expand a little bit more on that, how that's going to sort of help tie the two together.
Yeah, I think that what we're going to do is really impact coaches and the recruiting, and we're going to help them in their programs. We're committed to building value for college coaches, and there's certainly a number of ways to do that, and that we plan to do that. Most coaches don't have the time to run their own camps or, in some ways start their own business. And so what we want to provide is expert camp management and position these coaches to take more control of the market, derive new revenue, lower their expenses to a certain degree, and increase the value of their brand and the institution for where they coach at. And coaches can generate revenue for themselves at camp. They can engage with the juniors to determine, like I mentioned before, if their personality along with their game is a cultural fit for their program. And they really get that opportunity to not only do that, but provide important insights into the team's performance expectations. And juniors will get a really good sense pretty quickly, I think, whether those performance expectations or the level of the team, whether that student is going to be looking at a high-end D1 school, or they're going to be looking at a mid to lower D1 school or a D2, D3 school, et cetera. All are fantastic. Playing collegiate golf, there's nothing like it, in my opinion. I was fortunate enough to do so. But, these experiences that the juniors can have with coaches can prove to be invaluable.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer, the more that we can educate ourselves in whatever capacity, whether it's golf or life in general, the better off that we're going to be, the more doors that become open. And students, particularly young girls now, are starting to recognize the advantage and the opportunities that golf in general is opening up, but particularly getting involved. We're seeing more and more scholarships being made available for young girls to play on golf teams now. Obviously, there's still a long ways to go, but we're seeing that. And so I want to sort of sidetrack just for a second here, and something I was thinking about earlier when you were talking about some of the participation in TGA programs that you're finding out later, was 40% of some of the participants went through the programs. Are you seeing give us an idea of the breakdown as best you can of male to female ratio? How many, percentage-wise in going through the programs are typically female, and what is male? And are you starting to see sort of an uptick, if you will, in more female participants coming in through TJ's programs?
Absolutely. We are 58% male and 42% female. So it's a pretty good ratio. And, with TGA, the idea of making golf available and accessible to everyone, certainly you have that. Maybe it's an end goal, maybe it's not, but that college scholarship opportunity certainly does loom, especially if you have a junior that shows some talent. So I 100% agree with you that there is more and more emphasis on the girls and women's game. Let's look at the caliber of player on the LPGA Tour. I mean, it's outstanding, and the opportunity to have that collegiate experience is, like I said, it's invaluable. So we, at TGA, the opportunity to introduce our game to, or I like to call it a sport, into and build that passion for the women is outstanding, and it really can provide them the education of where they can take the sport and where they can take their passion for playing it.
It's interesting, that you said that, because one of the things that I do now, or have been doing for a number of years, in addition to doing this program, Golf Talk Live on Thursdays, I have another program called the Women of Golf that I do Tuesday mornings. And every Tuesday that obviously following a Symetra Tour event, my partner on that show, Cindy Miller, who's an LPGA professional, we host the winners each week from the Symetra Tour. And
awesome.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing how these young ladies, how together they are. I mean, they're not only great golfers. In fact, some of them make me sick because when they start talking about their driving distance and stuff like that. In fact, Cindy and I were talking about it the previous week. We had a young lady on, and I think she was averaging like 285 yards, and she's like 5'4" or something like that, and I'm 6'4", and I'm struggling to hit that now. But anyways, that's another story. But these young ladies are
the Symetra Tour. The Symetra Tour,
yes.
you look at what these women are doing and how they're grinding to get to obviously the LPGA Tour. That there's so many amazing stories that come out of those experiences and those events. I know that there's a prominent guy on Twitter. I think it's called Monday Q Info, but the stories that he tells of these players and their journeys to make the PGA Tour, it's just awesome, and it's a great read. I never got into it, and it's not a road that I chose to go down, but certainly have the greatest of respect for what these athletes are trying to accomplish, and for you to support the Symetra Tour winners like that is wonderful.
Yeah, we really enjoy having them, and they are so humble and whatnot as well, and they just really they really have it together, and they're very open and honest about their journey. I mean, obviously some are kind of riding high when things are going well, and some of them have even at points throughout their career have thought, even a couple of years into their career, they're thinking, I must be crazy doing this, things aren't going right, and then all of a sudden, they're coming out as winners because they've changed their mindset around, and now all of a sudden they've developed a whole new thing. So, and a lot of it, they go back to their earlier times growing up and involvement in junior golf programs, and who knows, there may be some that are on in the winner's circle coming out of the Symetra Tour here in the U.S. that may have gone through programs like yours. So, that'd be an interesting thing to follow up at some point. But I want to ask you something. You received an endorsement from the Golf Coaches Association of America. How did that relationship come about?
Well, I think that it's critical to get endorsed by coaches who have such a significant impact on junior golfers and who spend their time educating and guiding the lives of collegiate athletes. For me, it was seeing the value that they bring and being able to marry that with providing a service that they didn't already have. It didn't exist. And I began talking about it with Greg Gross, the CEO of the GCA, quite some time ago, and he was very supportive of what I was envisioning and what the track record was with TGA and the value proposition that we could provide for juniors and their families. And it was about, as you mentioned before, creating a niche, right? So never before has a camp management company catered specifically to individual coaches in their institutions. And so we could bring something to the table for their members that hadn't been done before. And, that's going to be part of our mission and part of the events that we run. But, with my background, I wanted to provide this service to coaches and juniors, and been a great, partnership so far. And it, obviously it was just announced a few weeks ago, and we're all waiting for the NCAA to give the green light for camp to come back. But, we look forward to building this partnership with them, and it's just a long time coming. And, Greg and his team are amazing to work with, and their members are truly guiding these kids and their decisions and their futures in golf.
Yeah. There's so many opportunities that, are available now, through golf, not just playing, not just teaching, but other areas in business as well that golf really works hand in hand in. So this is a great opportunity for these youngsters to get involved in a program like CGE because, again, that's another stepping stone. So before you tell us what sort of happens typically or what is going to happen in a CGE camp, What went into formulating the details? And you said, yeah, because I'm going to get you to walk through a little bit of it. You obviously had to put a lot of thought into what was going to be, what you wanted the camp experience to be. And obviously there was a temptation to pack as much as possible, in there, because you want it to be a lasting impression to these youngsters. So what went into it? What was sort of the thought process that going into, setting up the agenda? And then give us an idea what, for maybe parents that are listening out there that are kids that are interested in golf, that this might be a next step for them. What can they expect at a CGA camp?
Well, our number one goal was for juniors to get unprecedented access to coaches and vice versa. That's really the key, is to create that relationship and some transparency. And we worked with the GCAA and their members, the coaches, to really refine an inviting camp experience that fits for all juniors. Now, again, I think that there's going to be an emphasis on the players that are aspiring to play collegiate golf, but that doesn't mean that, a junior who's just starting to make his way into the scene can't get a lot out of a camp. And I would venture to guess, if the earlier you were to explore a camp like this, the easier that player pathway and education in the golf industry will be. But couple all that with the junior feedback that we're getting and what they want to experience at camps, we feel like that product is going to be a winner. And, a typical CGE camp, we're looking at, again, catering to each stage of a golfer's development, including instruction and educational seminars related to playing collegiate golf, and helping juniors understand expectations and how to achieve their goals. And that's, whether they're a highly skilled junior player who's looking to build a relationship with a coach, or you're an 11-year-old player who's played a few junior tournaments and you have goals that you want to set and you want to do that with a collegiate coach, those are all fantastic experiences, and that's what we want them to have, is a first-class experience, and regardless of the playing ability. But if you really want to drum it down into a lower level, we're going to have instruction-based events, contest skills, on-course practice rounds and tournament round simulations with the coaches, seminars, more specifically what coaches are looking for in players, how to separate yourself as a recruit, day in the life of college players, Q&A discussions for juniors and their parents. And, hopefully there'll be some time, like you said, there's going to be a lot crammed in, but hopefully there'll be some time for campus and these golf facility tours. I mean, these colleges, these universities, and the golf facilities that they have or they're building are amazing. And I've been lucky enough to be able to tour a few of them over the past 6 to 9 months. And the experience that these juniors can have at one of these camps is going to be out of this world.
I think, when you talk about camps and you think of the idea of, going, it's a much different experience. When I think of camps, and it was, this was a dumping ground, years ago for parents to say, well, I'm going to send my kid to camp. But, and it was fun. Don't get me wrong. It was a good experience. But, you've got something here with really what you're doing that, has the word fun in it. It really is a lot of fun, and not just because I enjoy and play golf and teach golf, but, I understand the core value that golf brings to not only an individual, but even to a community. So when you now are about to reach a huge milestone of, reaching its, your millionth kid, if you will, what's going to be your vision moving forward for growth, over the next, say, 5 to 10 years? What are you looking at? Obviously, you want to continue to grow, but in your mind, based on what you're, bringing together with all of your stats and things, where do you see things happening? What do you envision the growth to be over the next, 5 to 10 years?
I believe that golf is positioned for significant success and growth over the next decade. I think that, COVID was a very hard time for everybody, and what it did for the golf industry was bring to light this amazing game, this amazing sport that could benefit people in so many ways. I mean, it gave a chance, golf gave people a chance to come together during a time when you couldn't. And so I think that because of the rise in rounds and number of players who were either new to the game or coming back to the game because of the environment out there, there is great opportunity for success in the next decade. And I see that across all levels of the industry. For us, from TGA's standpoint, the opportunity to cultivate that demand and to add more programs, add additional age groups is going to be huge. And we're already seeing that. We actually are working with a few, not a lot, because most schools are still closed, but in the schools that we're working with, the demand is so intense, and we're used to running one program a week per school, that now you're starting to see 2 to 3 programs a week that are selling out in a matter of hours because of the demand for it. So, I think that demand will then continue on, not only through the after-school programs, but also through the camps and the events and the ability to get families together. As it relates to CGE, I think that there's a lot of factors that are going to go into making CGE a success. And number one, it's to make the camps essential to the recruiting process. And that's not going to be an easy feat. I still believe that, these camps can provide this access to coaches and really giving these players an understanding of what's out there and in front of them. But most importantly, I think it's going to be important to change the mentality that these coaches, regardless of how good a player is, that they can have significant impact on a junior's life and their golfing career. And that, to me, is so very important. I think we all had in golf, we all looked up to, either your parent or your professional or somebody in golf that you watched on TV, that you read about. You always had that person that you could look up to and that you envied and that you wanted to be like, et cetera. And, these college coaches are in such a great position to impact these lives. And that, to me, is the most important. Right now, we see that in TGA at more of an introductory level, some in the recreational level, but you're talking about the college coaches impacting kids at all levels, obviously including the highest junior golf level for both boys and girls. So, it's about high value proposition and experience for the juniors and their family, making sure, like you said, it's fun, but they have a great time and they get a lot out of it. And CGE is going to be all about opening doors to new partnerships and places to host camps. It's going to be another step in the pathway. And a place where I see great opportunity for growth is that camps don't have to be one and done, that there's an opportunity to create a camp pathway. Obviously, the tournament pathway for kids is for juniors is very it's very steadfast, right? Everybody wants to make it to the AJGA Tour, the Junior Golf Tour, and so the camp pathway is a little bit different, right? There's really no next step in the camps, and I believe that there's a great opportunity to create that, not necessarily for the best players, but for the best kids, and to provide unique and transformational opportunities for them. So I think our industry is well positioned, and I'm excited to see the growth.
What's interesting, really about what you do, Joshua, is this. You don't just fill a void, by opening access to golf, but you actually educate really people about the game, and I'll explain to you what I mean. When most people turn on their television and they see some sort of representation of golf, it's always at a very high level. that's their exposure to golf, unless they have, somebody in their family that's introduced them. But for most kids out in the street, if they turn on, they see the PGA, they see the LPGA, they see, a very high level of golf. And the first thing that, and I've talked to a lot of kids, and the first thing goes through my, this isn't for me. I can never be the next Tiger Woods, or I could never be somebody like an Annika Sorenstam or a Michelle Wie. So for them, it's kind of not attainable. But really what TGA does is shows them that you may or may not ever aspire, you may not even want to become, the next Michelle Wie or what have you, but this is a game that you can enjoy too. Because one of the criticisms I have about golf in general is that the impression that we give is that it's a very exclusive sport and not an inclusive sport. In other words, not everybody feels like they can be part of it, and it's not just monetarily and so forth, but it's just the fact at the level, the representation that we see in media is of that highest level. You've now bursted through the glass ceiling, if you will, and you're saying, no, that's not really what golf's about. Golf is something that everybody can enjoy, and everybody has an opportunity to aspire to whatever level they want to aspire. Now, obviously, some are going to go on and be great golfers, and others are going to find other paths. But at the very core of it, they're being introduced to this game that otherwise they may not have, because it is not in the general population as much as I said earlier about other sports. You've now opened that door for the last 20 years, and I say this with all sincerity, you need to be commended for that, because that's something that has not happened for many, many decades in golf, and you've done it in 20 years, and you're continuing to do it. So kudos to you for that.
Well, certainly appreciate that. There definitely is a difference between the recreational/amateur game in golf than the professional game. I think professionals provide a large value to the amateur recreational players. I mean, they give them something similar to what I'm saying with college coaches, and how, the amount of knowledge and experience that they can get from the college coaches. It's very similar to recreational and amateur players as it relates to the professionals. I mean, there's two different games, and then you look at what happened today at Augusta, and clearly Justin Rose is playing a different game than every other professional out there. He was playing a different course or something.
Right.
But
right.
But yeah, it's there's a lot of opportunity in golf, and you never know what you can glean from it. When you introduce a child or even an adult to the sport, you never know where they're going to take it, whether they're going to become the next CEO of Callaway, whether they're going to be managing a top golf location, whether they're going to be, working with the PGA of America or the LPGA. There's so many opportunities out there, and let alone the amount of players that we can get into the sport. So the idea here, with TGA is obviously, expand that base, get as many people in, get them into the player pathway along the way. They will be impacted by a number of people and shown different branches that they can take based on their passion. And with CGE, it's a little bit different. These are kids and families who, for the most part, they have an idea of where they want to go. They're not really completely sure how to get there yet or where their true opportunity lies, but there are people out there, namely the coaches, who can help them navigate. And to be able to provide them access to that is a great service, not only to the juniors and their families, but also to the coaches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And just to further the point a little bit, they're even if they don't get into the golf industry, golf can open so many doors. There's so many business opportunities that golf can really help, because golf is, as I've said many, many times, really can mimic life in so many ways. I mean, when we get out and we're challenged by some of the things that we're faced with on the golf course, whether it be bunkers or water or what have you, we have to, really put on we really have, some more than others, but, you really have to put on your thinking cap to sort of navigate some of those challenges you may be faced with. Well, that can help strengthen that part of you in your everyday life as well, because we're faced in many challenges in everyday life. So, they kind of work hand in hand in that. And I found something interesting as I was reading through the notes preparing for tonight. And, something that I think is really stands out and why I said what I did a few minutes ago is, roughly 70% of TGA's participants and their parents have never played golf before becoming part of your organization involved with TGA. So this really is very interesting because we have a lot of millennials, you're bringing a lot of them into the sport. So why do you think all of a sudden they're becoming attracted, young parents particularly are becoming attracted? What is it about this game that they're starting to say, hey, you know what, hey, there's something here?
Well, I think it's kind of backwards in the sense that in the past, I believe that we thought parents brought kids to the sport, juniors to the sport. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing is 70% of our participants, like you said, it's approximately that, we're getting the kids in before their parents. And so because golf is a time-consuming activity, it's an individualistic sport, but it can be enjoyed by everybody together, that they start to engage their parents, and their parents almost inherently become involved with golf. I mean, that was the challenge that we always had from the beginning of TGA, especially when it came to scaling it in the franchise model, is, yes, we have something unique, but you have to create a business model behind it that's profitable, that can, hit every single aspect of a community. And, we did that not only in the affluent areas through parents and kids paying for programs that they attended, but also through a 501c3 foundation that we can, serve the under-resourced in the communities that we're in. But there's such a great opportunity to get these parents and these kids together, and that's really never been thought of. And we feel like we've been successful in that. We have a long way to go. We still, we've been doing it 20 years, but we still are getting better and learning every day. But the value proposition had to be there. Otherwise, we wouldn't have, almost 100 franchises in TGA and provide that great value proposition.
What's really interesting is when you look at, what you were just talking about, typically, like I know from my own experience, I mean, I got into golf or learned to play golf at a very young age. I was technically, I was 7 years old when I really kind of had a little bit of an understanding. My father taught me when I was younger than that, started to show me a little bit, but obviously I had to get to about 7 before I could kind of comprehend everything. But, he introduced me to the game. It wasn't the other way around. And you're exactly right in your analogy is now we're starting to see, as more juniors get involved, just like with many other, as I said earlier, with many other sports, if your kid goes to soccer camp or they go to, hockey camp or whatever it is, the parents are going to watch and support them. So golf has really been kind of a little behind the 8 ball for a long time with that because, there wasn't as many junior programs out there for, again, golf being a little bit more difficult than some of the others and more challenging and obviously a little pricier as well. You didn't see a lot of that happening. But you're really doing things, like you said, kind of backwards, is you're bringing the kids in, they're enjoying it, they're relishing this experience, and the parents want to be involved. They want to not just come and support and watch them play, but they're saying, hey, you know what, this is something, it takes a few hours if we go on a trip, if there's a golf course nearby, we can go and enjoy this in some capacity as a family now. So it's another activity that brings them together. And, this is something, again, which is nice, unlike some other sports where, when you get a little bit older, you kind of have to shelf that because the body just can't do it. Golf, you can be well into your golden years and still be able to play with some regularity. So, I really like the fact that what your business model is doing is really helping to strengthen the bond in families by getting the kids involved at a very early age and then developing up through your various programs. And obviously it's working because you're getting that next generation of parent getting involved as well, right?
Absolutely. There certainly is a great opportunity for that. It's a labor of love, but it's also the ability to, as I keep mentioning, value proposition. What golf fights against is not. It fights against other sports. It fights against these families' time, and so
yes,
be able to show them where you can go with it, be able to show them how fun it can be, how family-oriented it can be. That is that can last forever. So, yes, it's one of the few lifelong sports, and I share your story. And one of the reasons why I decided to start College Golf Experience is I was introduced to golf when I was 3, and it was by my grandparents. Yep. My parents didn't play, and they actually never went on to playing. And I was lucky enough to be a student athlete at Emory University and play collegiate golf there in Atlanta. And I was fortunate enough to pick the right school and had this amazing experience. But as a child of parents who didn't play and didn't understand the recruiting pathway at all, that right. motivated me to start this new endeavor and to improve on that and enhance the process for youth athletes and parents and college coaches to engage in an environment that's going to maximize value for everyone and create a more efficient pathway for kids to not only necessarily make the best collegiate decision for themselves, but also to see the opportunities in golf. And you're 100% right that it's not, whether you're in the golf industry or not, golf has tremendous value in business and building relationships and life, teaching life lessons, and that can go a long way in this world.
I've had a number of guests, surprisingly, over the years on my show. This is my 9th season, so I've been doing it for a little while. And I've had a few that have come on who had never played golf before but were in corporate America, whether it be a large bank or what have you they worked with. And one of the things that they said to me, which was really interesting, was that, they saw every, Monday morning, the group were coming in and, some of them had played golf on the weekend. They'd be talking about that, and they really didn't understand and, kind of felt it like we all do when we're, somebody's got a great story to share and you kind of wish you were part of it. And interestingly enough, they took the initiative to reach out to some of these other folks and said, hey, you know what, I've never played before, but what do I need to do to, to kind of jump in here? And surprisingly enough, each and every one of them, as I said, they went on to get in the golf business, not necessarily as teach professionals, but offer different programs to introduce others into golf. A light switch went on, and they recognized the value, as you said, as a business tool that golf provided them that they never had or never even thought of before, because they didn't grow up in a golfing family or a golfing community, but it was something that just happened to catch wind of at the, around the old water cooler, as they say. And now all of a sudden it's impacted their lives in such a different way. And really it sounds to me that you've put together the building blocks to work towards that with not only juniors, but now the next level with, into the collegiate areas, which is, again, going to further that agenda a little bit along at a later point, giving them other opportunities that they might not have, that obviously you experienced, that they may not have had the opportunity to do. You've now opened that door for them as well.
Sorry, Ted. I love the idea with TGA that with the franchise model, you are compensated basically on how big. So the more kids and families that you get involved in getting them in the player pathway and signing up for events and building their passion, the more money you're going to make. And that's the same as a lot of industries. But, in the past, there hasn't been a business opportunity for people to do that. In the past, it was, well, you need to go to a golf course to learn. And then, it was also told me when I first got started, ironically, that kids shouldn't have to pay to learn, even though in every other sport they're paying to participate, they're paying for coaching, et cetera, et cetera. So we just kind of made it more available and accessible and created a unique value proposition for parents to not saying no to getting involved or to signing their kid up for a lifelong sport. So we don't take that lightly. There is some pressure on us, to be honest, because we are their first exposure to the sport, and we take it very seriously, that it's important to make it fun and build their passion, et cetera. And, TGA is wonderful for all of those reasons. CGE is a little bit different, right? They already have a passion for it. They're already playing. Now it's a matter of, okay, where can you take this? Let me get you connected to coaches and other people who can show you the way, and let's talk about your goals. Let's talk about where you want to take your game, and we can help facilitate that happening. That, to me, is both of them are exciting for different reasons.
Yeah, and like I said, it's another stepping stone or another rung in the ladder, if you will, of their journey in along this game. So as we wrap up, Joshua, for the folks that are maybe interested in two areas, in TGA, let them know what as I mentioned it towards the end, we're going to let them know the website that they can go to get more information if they want to participate in some of the programs. And also, I know that you have access there if they want to reach out. If somebody that's interested in maybe a franchise opportunity, they can maybe contact through there as well. So where do they need to go if they want to get involved or want to reach out and learn more about TGA?
Well, TGA is playtga.com for those who might be interested or know others who are interested in the franchise opportunity and getting involved in your local community. It's franchisetga.com. And for College Golf Experience, we're newly launched. Would love to hear people's feedback. If you've got it, please send it to me. But it's collegegolfx.com. And you'll see a lot of information on the website. Camps are not up yet because I think, as I mentioned earlier, the NCAA will be coming out next week, actually, with the decision whether camps can start in June or August. So we have to wait for them to make that decision before coaches can schedule their camps. But it's exciting. It's becoming very real, and the partners and GCAA, I couldn't be more thankful to be with them in this endeavor, and I think we're really on to something special here, and I'm proud to be part of it.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's great. This is an area that really will help not only the students have a better understanding and the kids in general have a better understanding of what opportunities can be made available, but as I said earlier, there's a lot of parents out there that don't know what steps to take or where to go and, are looking for answers as well. So obviously this is going to help, guide them as best as they can in that avenue and that route as well. So I think, again, kudos to you and your team for putting this all together. Well, Joshua, as always, it's a pleasure. And I always enjoy having you on because I always learn something new. And I really, I can't emphasize this enough. I really appreciate what you do for golf. There's a lot of great people in this industry. There's a lot of great businesses in this industry. But you have a uniqueness in what you're doing. And I think this is something that really has been a huge boost in golf. And the fact that you've been doing it now for 20 years and still going strong is a testament to your vision and the others that are part of the franchise group and so forth. So kudos to all of you, but particularly to you, Joshua, for really spearheading this and getting it off the ground. You've done a fantastic job, and I look forward to hearing more about the college aspect as it becomes available and more, down the road and becomes more available. But I appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing it with my audience, and I look forward to you coming back again soon.
Thank you, Ted. It's an honor. It's always great to talk to you. Hope you and your family are doing well, and appreciate all the kudos. But I don't think I'd be here without our franchises and our partners. And frankly, to be honest, the GCAA and Greg Gross, he helped instill the confidence in me that we could do this and provide this service for the coaches, and how important and how needed it was for the juniors and their families. You hit the nail on the head. You hit the nail on the head. The education process in golf can sometimes get lost.
Yep.
With these juniors and their families, and to be able to walk them down a path and to be able to show them the opportunities and guide them on where to go, that's something special.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm excited that you're going to be literally not too far in the distant future. You're going to be hitting that 1 millionth kid. I know that's going to be a day of celebration, and I hope you've got something very special planned for that 1 millionth kid. Maybe something a little extra for them, maybe through some of your partners, and that they can arrange something. I think that would be kind of exciting, but for that youngster anyways. But again, Joshua, thank you very much for joining me tonight. Always a pleasure, and I look forward to you coming back and spending some time with me again and the audience.
Thank you, Ted. Be well.
You too. All right. Bye-bye. All right. That was Joshua Jacobs, CEO of TGA Premier Sports. And as he mentioned, for those of you that are interested in TGA, you can learn more about the programs, and you can get all of the information there if you go to playtga.com. That's www.playtga.com. And if you're interested, again, it's still sort of new, getting off the ground, but the college golf experience, if you want to get more information there, and as he said, the NCAA is coming out with their announcement, he believes next week, with when things are going to be a little bit more open. It may be June, it may be August. They're not quite sure yet. But anyways, you can go and check out and get more information. Go to collegegolfx.com. That's www.collegegolf and the letter x.com to get more information there. And I'm sure they'll keep you updated as well. All right. I want to take this opportunity again one more time to thank my very special guests on the Coach's Corner, John Hughes, Pete Buchanan, and, of course, my very special guest, Joshua Jacobs, CEO and founder of TGA Premier Sports. Thank you as well, everybody, for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. I hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget, if you want to get more, learn about the tips that we talked about on the Coach's Corner panel, go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live and just scroll down to the on-demand section. Just give it a few moments as it populates, and the recorded version will be there. You can go and listen to that section if you came in late. There's some great tips on how to hit the ball further, and we talked about as well how to create a sustainable plan to last time tested, if you will, or last the test of time, whatever. I'm getting tired, so I got to go. Thank you, everybody. God bless, and I'll see you next week right here on Golf Talk Live.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coach's Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.